Okay, we're recording. Welcome. So we find ourselves at we could call it an intersection, a meeting point, and we're meeting. I guess it's a meeting point. What I mean though is in our lives, always at every moment, we find ourselves at this meeting point. So if you just tune into your experience right now, just notice you just notice that you're here. And I don't mean the thought I'm here. I mean the actuality of being here. You can just notice that you're here. You could notice that this experience is happening. And then there seems to be this, I don't know what we call it. Could call it drama. Maybe drama is like a charged word or a loaded word. So we'll just call it a meeting. Okay, we'll just call it a meeting. So there's a meeting happening, isn't there? There's a meeting happening here. And this meeting is, we have a lot of stories about the meeting. We have a lot of opinions about this meeting that's happening. So just to be clear, when I say this meeting, I mean this present occurrence, this present happening, this what is actually occurring right now. So it's not the thoughts about what's happening now. In reality, we can't have any thoughts about what's happening now. We could have thoughts pretending to be about what's happening now. But there's the immediacy of what's actually happening. And in this meeting, I think if we're really honest, I mean, definitely if I'm really honest, so I'll just say that if I'm really honest, then this meeting that's happening now is like a volcano erupting. There's no, or it's like a tsunami. Okay, so there's no possibility of me getting it under control. Can you relate to that? Can you relate at all to this sense that there's this enormous present happening, and I don't stand a chance of getting it under control. Now, this I think is really useful to see, because if I would actually say it's essential to see, because if I don't see this, what am I going to do? I'm only going to do what I've been taught to do. I'm only going to do what every other human does. So all I have to do is look around and see what is everybody else doing and how well is that working out. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that I personally do not know a single person, not one, who I actually know, with any degree of intimacy, where I believe that that person has figured it out. They've got it all under control. It's all working for them. They're totally satisfied and happy. So when I look around and I see, well, how well is that working? How well is the way of the world working? The way of the world. That's what we could call it. Let's not call it the way of the world. That's that's unfair to the world. Let's say it's the way of the conditioned mind up to this point. It's the way that we've been taught. When I look, I have to tell the truth. That way doesn't work very well. It doesn't give satisfying results. I see people who are unhappy. I see people who are unhappy from morning to night, day in and day out. And they keep struggling doing the same thing. And I would say it's because it's not because they're bad people. It's not because they're weak people. It's not because there's something wrong with them. I would say it's just a misunderstanding. It's just a misunderstanding of the reality of what's actually happening. It's when we don't recognize what's actually occurring, when we don't see it clearly, then we'll continue to do what we've always done. We'll continue to do through no fault of our own. We will just do what people have always done. Now we can hope and pray that that will be different, right? I mean, we've all done that. But it reminds me of this story, which you've maybe heard. I may have told it in the past, I don't know, but I'll tell it now. It's a good story. So says me. Okay. So uh, there's a flood, a very, very large flood that occurs, and the waters are rising, and all of the people in this town are evacuating. And there's a man in the town who says, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. And so the waters rise, and pretty soon he's surrounded, and there's no way out. Some people come in a boat. The water's only up to like 3 feet at this point. Some people come in a boat and they say, we're so glad that we found you. Hop in the boat. We'll take you to safety. And the man says, no, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. So people say, well, you're crazy. What are you doing? No, God's got me. You go on. So the people in the boat go on, and the man's waiting. Man, the water keeps rising. He has to go up to the roof. He's on the roof of the house, and a helicopter comes. The search and rescue team comes in a helicopter, and they say, we're here to rescue you. Grab onto the ladder. We'll lower the ladder. You grab on, climb up. He says, no, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. So the waters keep rising. The man dies. And this is a Christian themed story. So the man goes to heaven and meets God, and God says, well, the guy says, why didn't you, I was praying, why didn't you come rescue me? And God says, well, I did. I came in a boat, then I came in a helicopter. So our prayers, the reason I'm telling this story is I genuinely believe that our prayers are answered, but we don't recognize it. So the prayers are answered when we say, I don't want to go on suffering. I don't want to go on struggling. I don't want to go on being miserable. I don't want to go on lying to myself and to others. I don't want to go on without direct knowledge of where contentment is and how to access contentment. I don't want to go on in that way. And we pray in that way, and I genuinely believe the prayer is answered, but we don't recognize it. Like the man doesn't recognize God in the shape of the people on the boat or the people in the helicopter. And so to me, this is an essential thing to see. What I started out saying is that this present meeting now, because this is where our life exists. Isn't that true? Can you see that our life exists here? Like we've never existed. We've never lived in the past. We've never lived in the future. I mean, this is the kind of thing you've heard people say, and maybe you've heard people say it and you've read it over and over and over and over. But have you really considered this? Have you really, really, truly, deeply considered this? Have you really looked at what this is actually pointing to? Not just as a thought, not just as some idea, but the actuality. Can you actually see that our life is only now? We only live now. And all of our strategies, all of them, every one of our strategies, you can take a look and see. I mean, it won't do you any good if I just say this, so I want you to look and see that our strategies, look to see that every one of your strategies, every one of them is future based. Your salvation lies in the future. That's where it's going to happen. Every one of the strategies. Because we have to lie to ourselves in order to continue with the programming, the conditioning, the way we've learned, the way of of the way in which people primarily conduct themselves is based upon future salvation. So we're having to lie to ourselves in order to perpetuate that, because if we look, we can. I hope we can see. And if you don't see this, let me know, and I'll give my usual caveat. So I'm recording this, and this will go up publicly on YouTube. So if you speak, that will be in the recording, and you're giving me your implicit consent to include that in the public video. You can also use the text chat feature if you wish to send questions or comments without speaking. But let me know if you disagree. If you don't see this, if this isn't clear, let me know, because anything else that we could look at this point sort of depends upon seeing this much. So if it's unclear, or if you disagree, or if you have questions about it, let me know. Okay. So it's an open invitation, but I'll continue. So if we can see this, if we can see that our lives are now, always now. And isn't that true? Don't you always live now? So when you see that you're always living now, and then you see that every strategy you could come up with, every single one of them is about future salvation. then hopefully it becomes obvious that those are all doomed to fail. Which seems maybe like terrible news, but let's see. Okay. Because this is the thing, we think that we think we're looking, we think that we're going to find an easier, better way. We find, like, on some level, we already know where the actual answer lies. We know where the remedy to our suffering is. We know that. I mean, we all know that on some level. We've all had some glimpse of it. We, on some level, know that the answer is found now. We know that the answer is found in surrender. We know that the answer is found in 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 a what's the right word? I mean, I guess there's never a right word, but we know generally where the answer lies. But we keep thinking that's too hard. That's too terrifying. That's too scary. That's too impossible. Couldn't do that. I'm going to find a better, easier way. And so we skirt around it, and we actually work really, really hard just to ignore the elephant in the room, as we say. So if you don't know that expression, it's an English language expression. The elephant in the room just means here's something that's completely obvious. We all know it, but we don't acknowledge it. We don't really see it. We should see it. It's there, but we're ignoring it. We're working hard to ignore it. You have to work. If there's an elephant in the room, you have to work hard to ignore it. So the amount of effort that we put into trying to avoid the answer is the misery. But we don't understand it that way, because here's this erupting volcano or the tsunami that's here presently. And there's something in the ancient recesses of our programming that says, it just screams no. It just says no. It's just says, you know, screw you, buddy. I will not do it. That's what it says. I'm not going to do that. And I know, because I've sat in these kinds of meetings in the past, and I know what the mind does. The mind just says no. So, and then, but then, on the other hand, because there's an invitation here. I hope you realize that. I'm inviting you right now to look and see. If you look and see now, then it's over. And when I say it's over, I don't mean the volcano. I mean the denial. It's over if you really look and see now. But I know what happens because I've watched myself. I know exactly what happens. There's there's a part of you that really wants that more than anything, and then the rest of you is screaming no. But we have to, we're all conditioned to be very polite. Even those of us who think we're not so polite, even those of us who think we're very rude and whatever, it's not true. We're all very polite. We're all very, very, very polite. And that politeness is just our strategy to keep it together. It's just our way of trying to control it, to manage it, and to deny it and ignore it. So I hope that you can see this, and I hope you can see, I mean, because it doesn't take, you don't have to look very hard just to see that you don't have any stability. So the ups and downs, you're like it's like you're on a roller coaster, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So you get a little bit of hope. Oh, I'm up. Maybe I'll be up forever. And then down, up, down, up, down. So that lack of stability, as usual, I'll be all over the place. Okay. That lack of stability is, and I'm going to make a biblical reference. I apologize, but it's one of my favorite references, is the story about the it's a caution, that don't be like the man who builds his house on sand, right? You're familiar with this caution. It's a biblical caution. Don't be like the man who builds his house on sand. Be like the man who builds his house on rock. So when we build our house on sand, metaphorically, then that's what I'm referring to, up and down, up and down. We don't have stability. Anytime there's anything around us is shifting, we are shifting. Why? Because we don't know where we are. We don't know where the ground is. We don't know where stability is. And the reason for this is because our whole identity has formed around trying to control this volcano, this tsunami. Call it a black hole if you want. I don't care. Call it whatever. But it is a force completely beyond our control and completely beyond our ability to define it. And we don't have stability because we have defined ourselves really exclusively as trying to manage this unmanageable. So, go ahead and imagine for a moment you're trying to control a hurricane. How would you do that? And it's like when they try to control wildfire, these enormous wildfires, and they eventually they just say, oh, we can't. Because you can't control it, you can't contain it, you can't get around it, you can't get a grasp on it, you can't get a hold on it. It slips right through. It's so big, there's no possibility. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm pointing to. That's what this meeting is. That's what this present meeting, this intersection in our lives, always, now, that's what it is. It's like a hurricane or a tsunami or a massive wildfire. So we're never going to control it. And so if we look at what are what's meeting? So I use the word meeting or intersection. So what is meeting? What's actually meeting here? And we can look, if we just look at our experience without trying to tell a big story about it, but we just look to see what's actually happening in our direct experience. Here's what I'm proposing we'll see. But you take a look and see for yourself what you discover. So what I'm proposing, and I'll just look to see, what do I actually notice? Okay, so the meeting, okay, what I observe is all of this conditioning, all of the conditioning that, I mean, so I have 3 young kids. Have is an interesting word to use there, but I don't possess them, but they live with me and I feed them. And so, but I have 3 young kids. Okay, so having 3 young kids, it's like watching evolution take place, because I see all of this stuff, you know, all of the struggles with all of these things, all the things they struggle with, and I see it's the same things that everybody else is struggling with, but I just see that I'm witness to how these strategies develop and form, strategies for dealing with it. So there's this enormous welling up of energy, like a volcano erupting. And then there's this overlay of story. So this welling up of energy, and then the story. And the story is whatever, though it's all of the stories of all of humanity, maybe even non-humans, maybe reptiles and fish, I don't know. But all of this, just this massive energy, and then the stories, which are stories like, it's their fault, I don't have enough, it's not fair. Kind of the big ones. So there's the pure energy, there's the story, and then these are meeting, and then what else is meeting? What else is meeting is well, I don't know what to call it, but you can just take a look and look for yourself. What would, you don't even need to call it. It's whatever is seeing. And this is the amazing thing to me, is that that, and this is the thing that we overlook. Because and this is, to me, maybe the most crucial aspect of this is, if we look, we can see that we're seeing. And by seeing, I mean perceiving. We're perceiving. So isn't it true that you perceive your experience? I mean, it's like so obvious. I don't know how it's so obvious. You can maybe call it stupid obvious. It's so obvious. You perceive your experience. Now, if you perceive your experience, who are you? This is the thing that we forget about. We overlook it because we become so fixated on the other two things. We become fixated on the energy and on the story. So the energy, particularly when the energy is high energy, big energy, it has a tendency to provoke our conditioned stories and reactions. But most of us just fixate on that. We just stay with, oh, I don't feel well. I'm feeling bad. And why is that? Oh, it's their fault. It's because I don't have enough. So we're just looking at these stories to try and give meaning to this energy. But what we overlook is that there's this, we call it a third component. I don't really need to quantify them, but we'll do so. Okay, so we'll call it a third component. So the first component is the energy. The second component is the story. The third component is what is perceiving. Or we could just say perceiving. But we'll say what is perceiving, who is perceiving. So you are perceiving. And this is the thing that we overlook, but I'm telling you, I think it's a big deal. I think this holds the answer, because it helps us to see clearly what's actually happening. If we overlook this, then we have at least a third of our equation is missing. So we're not going to do very well at trying to figure this out if we're missing a third of it. And I'm suggesting that a third of it we habitually overlook, which is what is perceiving. Because and here's why this is important. Okay, I don't know if I can make this clear enough, but because to me this is a very, very significant thing to recognize. That when I believe that I have a problem, I'm overlooking this third of who's perceiving. Because if I'm really looking at who's perceiving or what's perceiving or perceiving, if I'm really aware of the perceiving, I'm aware, and I would invite you to look for yourself right now. So just be aware that you are perceiving. So this is not like, this is not advanced stuff. So you don't need to, I just want to be clear, it's not complicated. You don't need to make it complicated. I'm making it complicated, but just so we can look at it. So I'm talking about just the fact that you perceive. That's it, right? You're aware, you perceive, you see, you hear, you smell, you taste, you touch, you think. Now we can get all hung up in some big mental drama about, I thought there was no one, and who is that, and blah 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 blah. Forget about that for a moment. Let's just it's just words, so we don't need to get hung up on them, but just see what it is I'm pointing to. You are aware, you perceive. Now look at this awareness or perception, the seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling, whatever, all of that, just in its purest sense. Just your direct experience now. You just notice that the seeing, the perception, the awareness, can you notice the qualities of this? Can you notice the qualities of it? Does perception, in your experience, so just look at your experience, does perception in its purest sense, does it have any biases? Does pure perception actually care about you? Does pure perception have any compulsion to defend? Does pure perception have a problem with anything? Oh, and here's another one. Does pure perception actually know what anything is? So I'm just talking about your actual experience right now. And if you're willing, I'd actually be interested in hearing or reading if you have responses to any of those questions. Again, if you speak, it will be in the recording. If you don't wish to be in the recording, you could type it in the chat. If you don't want to do either, that's fine. But I would be curious just to know what you are seeing. Do you see what I'm curious if you're seeing, if you're noticing what I'm noticing? Nobody's gonna bite, I guess.
Joey, can I say something?
Sure.
I always see the past ideas about what this is. So it's the same wheel that just repeats over and over again.
Yeah.
About what this is.
Yeah.
And why I have to do something about it, and
yeah,
the stories about who I am, what others are, what my responsibility is, why I'm failing, or why I'm succeeding, why I have to do more of what's succeeding, and it's just the same old thing.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yes, exactly. That's perfect. That's what I'm describing. So that's the stories. Those are all what I'm referring to as the stories, the conditioning. So there's, so why on earth would we give any attention to those? Right. So if I have this story that says, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, and it just keeps repeating, why on earth would I give any attention to that? What a big waste of time, right? So but I'm not asking, it's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually wanting to know, why do I do that? So I look, why do I do that? Why on earth do I continue to give attention to these stories, this conditioning? Why do I keep energizing what it is that I don't want? I can see, that's why I said, I look around and I see everybody on this planet, more or less, you know, we like the variations in the conditioning by and large are pretty small. We might, you know, we like to sometimes pride ourselves, I'm a unique individual. Yeah, not so much. The conditioning is all similar enough. So I look around and I see, how's it working for people? Oh, not very well. How's it working for me? Not very well. So then I really want to know, why am I doing that? Because it's not working. It's not working out at all. Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? Maybe that's even a better question. How am I doing it? So I just want to look and see. First of all, I want to be clear on I just want to clearly see what's actually happening. So you just described perfectly exactly what I'm talking about, that this conditioning repeats over and over and over and over, and I continue to give my attention to it, and I continue to energize it as if somehow that was going to get me what I want. But when I look, I can see it's not going to get me what I want. It has never gotten me what I want. It has never gotten anybody what they want. I look and see everybody around me doing the same things. Everybody lying, hiding. I mean, you see the same thing. I know you all see the same thing. People hiding and lying, and we hide and lie. And so I see this and I say, this is miserable. I don't want that. So why am I going to continue to do that? So I want to look and see what's actually happening. So I see these stories. Seeing the stories is great. Seeing that they repeat over and over and over is great. Now, here's the question. When you see that much, then you want, what I'm proposing is you want to know, why do you do that? As well as how do you do that? How you do it is more important maybe than why, but why is also useful in this sense, because if you see why, then you see that it's just habit. Because if we don't understand, if we don't see the why, then we imagine, or we will be likely to imagine all kinds of reasons why, and they'll usually be reasons that will say, well, that's a good reason. For example, if I don't continue to give attention to I'm a loser, then everybody will know that I'm a loser. And when everybody finds out what a loser I am, then that will be the end of me. That will be terrifying. That will be horrible. It will be just torturous. I want to avoid that. So therefore, I have to continue to give attention to this story of I'm a loser, because I think I'm going to solve that somehow. So I have to see that that's what I'm doing. Now, when I see that that's what I'm doing and that's why I'm doing it, then it becomes very obvious, doesn't it? That's stupid. I mean, sorry to be so blunt, but it's true, isn't it? I mean, when you see why you do the things that you do, you realize all of them come down to you don't want to be exposed. You don't want other people, because you're not fooling you, are you? Not really. I mean, you know all of your secrets. You just work really hard to deny them as much as possible, but you know them. Who are you doing all of this for? Say, oh, I'm doing it for me. No, you're not. You're doing it to avoid other people's judgment. Not even that. You're just doing it to avoid your own uh, self-protective shell that you fear you'd have to increase if other people found out what a loser you are. So all of the energizing of these stories is just designed to just put off seeing reality as it is. I mean, someday you're going to die, and then what? You won't be able to protect yourself. You won't be able to defend yourself. So it's like we're playing these really, really stupid games, aren't we? The game is, I'm just going to hold on really tight until I die, and then I hope I win. Isn't that true? I mean, do you see that? So what I'm proposing is we can actually see what's really at stake. So because we assume that something serious is at stake. We assume that I'm at stake. Isn't that so? I mean, you assume that all of this is about you and that you're at stake. You assume that all of this conditioning is about you. And you assume that all of the feelings, the interpretations of the feelings that you have are about you, and that they're true and accurate. So, but let's look, let's see again. So there are these three, I'm proposing these three basic components. There's the energy, there's the story, and there's perception. You could use different words, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that reality is actually divided into these three things. I'm just saying that we can probably look and see these three aspects that come together now. So here's the thing. If I have this thought, I'm a loser. Do I care about that thought? The answer is no. I don't care about that thought. And there's a when I was in high school, there was a musical artist. What's the guy's name? I can't remember the name he used. There's a musical artist who had a string of hits. One of them was I'm a loser baby, I think. But the chorus, Beck, thank you. The chorus is in Spanish. Well, part of it's in Spanish. Soy un perdedor. Now, I didn't understand Spanish well enough I didn't know the word perdedor. So I didn't know what that meant. So he's singing Soy un perdedor, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, cool. Soy un perdedor, and whatever. Why do I care? Because I don't know what it means. It's just sounds. So this thought, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about this story. I don't care at all. I don't care any more about that story than I do back singing Soy un perdedor. Don't care. Why would I care? Do I care if I'm singing row, row, row your boat? No, I don't care about that. I don't care. They're just sounds. If I care, or if I think I care, here's the reason I think I care. Okay. The reason I think I care is because I'm overlooking this important, essential component. So I'm aware of the feeling, the sensation, the energy. Okay. I'm aware of the thought, the story. And if I overlook the third component, then I just stay fixated on these two things, and I link them up, and I say, well, this is the truth of what's happening. I'm feeling a big feeling, a really big feeling. I'm having the thought, I'm a loser. Therefore, this feeling is the feeling of I'm a loser. And now I've got to solve this. I've got to do something about it. The assumption, if we overlook this third component, the assumption will be, I am the subject. I'm the one that all of these things are about. They're about me. These stories are about me. The energy is my energy. The stories tell me what the energy is and what that means about me. So I'm a loser, coupled with big feeling, coupled with ignoring the obvious fact that I perceive, means I'm going to be desperately seeking to hide, protect myself, and seek future salvation. And I won't even know that there's another way. I'll just be doing that like every other human on the planet. So we don't have to do that. And yeah, hold on, let me read that. I have to go to the other screen. My let's see. They've switched things around on me. Chat. So it says, for me, success rather than failure is the trap. When a strategy works out and I get what I want, I conclude that I did that, and therefore that control can be achieved. Yeah, exactly. So that is the same. Yes, that's exactly the same thing. because it still maintains this, it still requires the ignorance. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to invite you right now to consciously recognize all three of these components. Don't get hung up on thinking this is the only model and that this is the only way to describe this. It's just pointings. But let's take a look in this way. So look right now at your present experience. And isn't it true that so we could call it feeling, we could call it sensation, we could call it energy. But isn't it true that you're aware of some energy or feeling now? If that's not true, you let me know. And can you notice so I guess there's a fourth component. Let's see if this is true. We'll get to that in a moment. Can you notice that that there are also stories that you have that attempt to give meaning to this feeling or sensation or energy? So examples of stories might be, I'm bored, I'm angry, I'm irritated, I'm failing, I'm scared, I'm better, I'm worse. There's countless possibilities, but can you notice that too? Can you notice that there are all of these stories that you try them on for size. You say, well, does that fit? Maybe that's it. Can you see how you can keep your attention on that switching between these two things, the feeling or the energy and then the stories, and you can just go back and forth, feeling, story, feeling, story, feeling, story, feeling, story, feeling, story, just back and forth. Can you see that? And can you see how when you do that, you become increasingly desperate for something that promises it will solve this? Oh, and there's another thing that I also want to take a look at. It's connected to perception, though. So notice that you also are perceiving. So you're aware of the feeling, right? You're aware of the energy, and you're aware of the thoughts, the stories. So if you read a book, you know probably you know that that book is not about you. Probably you know that you are aware of the book. You're aware of the story, right? And if you're reading the book, and let's say it's a, I don't know, it's a thriller novel. Not sure exactly what that means. It's just suspense. Okay. So if you start to experience a lot of energy, you probably you realize, okay, I'm just experiencing some energy, and yeah, I'm just reading a story. That's it. Just experiencing some energy and reading a story. You don't make a big deal of it. But if the stories come from the voices in your own head, it's different, isn't it? But the difference, I would say, is because when you're reading the book, you know that you're reading the book. You know that it's not actually about you. You actually have built into the experience, there's, for most of us, some level of awareness that we are aware, we are perceiving, we are the ones reading. It's not about us. And why is it that that's not true the rest of the time? I mean, I can read I could read a book about the most horrible things. I mean, a lot of the times books will tell stories about just horrible things that people do. Lie, cheat, murder, steal, cruelty, evil. You know, I mean, these stories can have all kinds of horrible things in it. Um, and then you know, whatever, who cares? I don't mind. Then I put down the book, and someone in my family, my wife or my kids, will just look at me the wrong way, and then I get upset. So I guess what I'm really getting to, okay, is, these would be better if I had it all planned out in advance. I then I could keep it really short. Okay, so here's the summary. We don't need to take it personally. So you can notice and here's how, okay, because this is what we need to know how, because if we don't know how, then it's just another should. And we all know we shouldn't take it personally. Everybody knows that. Anybody who's ever seen a post on social media, I'm sure knows, don't take it personally. But then we don't know how to do that. So we want to actually find out, how do I not take it personally? And what I'm proposing is a means to do that. So we can just see what's actually happening. It requires a lot of honesty with ourselves. Because if my, okay, so I'll give you an example. So this morning, I'll give you a little bit of the story. So uh, I rent, my wife and I rent our present place where we live, and we've just purchased some land, and we have a very small budget remaining, and our lease, our rental agreement is up in a month, or less than a month, and we are working toward building a home, building a house. Now, by just about any standards, by most standards, 1 month working part-time, because we have, raise our kids and have other things to take care of and other things for income and so forth. Part-time building, 2 adults building a house is big project. And so a lot of big feelings presently in my family. My wife has big feelings, I have big feelings, kids have big feelings. So I wake up and kids are having big feelings. I'm having big feelings. And I can see that, I can see all the conditioning. I can see all the stories. I can see all of the, I can see, so I'm just watching. I just see, okay, here are big feelings. Here are all the stories about whose fault it is, what the meaning of the feelings is, what I'm going to do about it. And since it's big and overwhelming, then what I'm going to do about it is smash stuff. I mean, that's the best I can come up with. So I'm just looking at this, and then but then I recognize, okay, so at that level, that's what's happening. Now, the old way would be either smash stuff or repress smashing stuff. And those are kind of the only 2 options that are available at the level, if I'm overlooking the perception, if I'm overlooking that perceiving is happening, if I'm taking it personally. If I'm taking it personally, then those are my only options. I'm either going to indulge or I'm going to repress. That's it. That's all that's available to me. Well, I can see that I'm totally dissatisfied by those options. I mean, I have no interest in smashing stuff, really. Not in reality. That's just the best. That's the story. That's the conditioning. That's what I've seen demonstrated to me. That's what countless generations have done and demonstrated to one another. That's all that we've known. Either I smash stuff or I repress it. But then this new possibility is that I can just, because I don't want either of those. I don't want to smash stuff. I don't want to repress it. Either one of those options would just be it would be miserable. It wouldn't be a life worth living. Who would want to do that? So this new option arises by seeing what's actually happening and no longer overlooking or ignoring the perception. So I can see, I can become aware of this perception, just as you can become aware of this perception now. And I can notice the qualities of this perception. I can notice that this perception does not care. Perception doesn't, taking it personally is not even a, it's not even a possibility. There's not even any, there's nothing, there's no person. There's just pure perceiving. The person exists in the story. So taking it personally is only happening at the level of story, at the level of the conditioned reaction, but in perception, it's open. So can you see that? Can you see that this perception is just open? It doesn't know what this is, doesn't know what needs to be done, it doesn't operate in that way. It just is, it's just perceiving. And what this perception offers is the possibility of just perceiving, not taking it personally, not reacting, not indulging, not repressing. Because at the level of story, I can have all kinds of stories. Now, of course, if we could have helpful stories, we could have functional stories, that might be nice. I'm not opposed to that. That would be great. I just don't have time for that, because everything's happening in real time, not not in imaginary controlled time where I get to be the savior in the future. The actuality is here now in real time, in which all I have is what's actually here, what's actually happening. So all of these ideas about how I'm going to fix it in the future, they just don't apply. They're not relevant to pure perception. And what pure perception offers is it really offers clarity on how to neither indulge nor repress. And it does this by introducing this we'll say it's like another dimension. It's like if we just exist in these two dimensions of energy, and the second one being story, conditioning, then it's like we're two-dimensional, and we're stuck on that flatness, constantly looking for where's the escape. I'm stuck. I need an escape. The pure perception offers us this third dimension, so that we are freed from the artificial constraints of the limitations of two dimensions, and allows us to see that this whole narrative of me and my life and how I have to get somewhere in the future and how I've got to fix it and how it's got to be okay in the future. I need salvation in the future. Through pure perception, here now, you can just pause. Notice that you are aware. Notice the qualities of this, and notice that you're aware of the story. You're aware of the energy. So you instantly have new perspective. And you can perhaps start to see, as I see, when I look in this way, that all of my previous reactions, all of the ways in which I've tried to control my life, have all been based on identifying as this story. It's just been about the story. It's just been fixation on the story. And it was just a failure to recognize this perception that's occurring, which already doesn't need anything, which is already okay, even though there may be big energy. There may be all kinds of things happening. So that's it. That's all I've got. Any other comments or questions? I'll say one more thing about it. This pure perception is effortless. And it's not just an idea. You can notice this for yourself. You can notice that you perceive effortlessly. You don't have to try. So the perception is not purely a function of your senses. The senses are part of perception, but you could notice you're perceiving if you have your eyes open or your eyes closed. You're perceiving if you're hearing or not. So perception isn't dependent upon those. And you can notice, like I said, that this is effortless. So you're just effortlessly perceiving. So this is in contrast to the amount of effort that goes into the fixation on the story. Because if we're interested in story, you'll notice, okay, here's another quality. Perception is, I don't know, it has this quality of it's non-local, non-linear. It's everywhere and nowhere. And it's everything is connected. There's no linearity to it. You don't need to try and stepwise go through something to arrive at something. The fixation on story is effortful and it's linear, right? We talk about trains of thought. And we sometimes worry about forgetting what we were thinking about. Because if you lose, or we talk about a thread, if you lose a thread, you don't want to do that, because then you've lost the whole thing. very fragile. We have to strain a great deal to maintain it. And why do we strain? We strain because we identify as that, and we're afraid that if we were to stop straining, we would lose the thread. And then we would just be exposed. We wouldn't be able to defend ourselves. Imagine that, if you couldn't defend yourself. Wouldn't that be horrible? People would just come and they'd insult you, but you couldn't defend yourself. You couldn't even take offense. I'm half joking, because I wouldn't be terrible at all. It'd be wonderful, but this is we don't know, we don't really trust in how good that really would be. We still are afraid to actually let go of the fixation on the story, because it is fragile. It really is. I mean, if you abandon it, if you abandon the fixation on the story, you'll have a hard time picking it back up. That's true. And I'm just proposing that your life will be better for it. So anything from anybody? There's no need. But it's a quiet day, I guess.
I get what you're saying about you know, the story, energy story, and perception, right? And I understand that perception doesn't care, you know, that perception is just watching it all and isn't invested in the outcome, right?
Yeah.
What I don't understand is not suppressing or indulging.
Yeah. Great.
I'm confused there, because it feels like if I don't indulge, I don't suppress, it's like then I'm in freeze mode.
Yes.
I'm confused and I don't know what to do.
Great. Thank you. It's a very good question. Yes. Okay. So very thank you. It's a very good question. So this comes back to where I had kind of started the conversation, which was that this energy is very big, like a volcano or a tsunami, as I described.
Yeah.
And so this habit of there is, for most of us, there's this very strong habit of, I must do something. I must do something, because if I don't, well, and you can look and see for yourself, and this I think is an important point. What is at stake? Something must be at stake. You must believe that something is at stake.
Yes, it feels unbearable. The status quo seems unbearable.
Yes.
So
but the status quo seems unbearable. However, everything that you do maintains the status quo. So, and that's what I'm wanting to see, is why, what's at stake, or what do you imagine is at stake, such that you maintain the status quo? Because you said, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, what you described, that you can see what I was describing, but then in the heat of the moment, you don't know what to do, because you seem to either indulge or repress. That seems to be the only two things that you know how to do. And I'm suggesting that that you do those because you perceive that something's at stake. So let's put this into an imaginary scenario for a moment.
Okay.
So let's imagine that you're sitting on you're at the beach next to the ocean, and a tsunami is coming, and you waited too long, so you're not going to escape in time. So there you are, and let's say the tsunami is 2 seconds away from striking. So very, very soon. It's imminent. So you're going to experience, I'm certain you will experience big energy. And what are you going to do?
Yeah. What could you do?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the point, is that there's nothing that we're going to do about it. But now see what's different when we're talking about more ordinary sort of thing, where you know you have a good you know that there's a very good chance that it's not going to kill you. So it's disagreement with somebody, or it's whatever it is, doesn't matter. Something happens in your ordinary life, and you have big feelings, and then you either indulge or repress. And notice, why is that? What's at stake? Why do you have to do anything?
Because I think doing nothing feels like suppression. Feels like I'm suppressing.
Right. So this is great. So how do you know that that's what that means? You say it feels like suppression. How do you know that it is suppression?
And I don't know. I don't know.
So because if you're, here's my definition. Okay. In order to, if you're suppressing, you're doing. You can't. So both suppression and indulgence are doing. So, and let me elaborate on that briefly. Okay, so if I have, if my conditioned reaction is to scream, and so I could indulge that, I could scream. I could also not scream, but I could use repression to achieve that. And how would I do that? I would strain to prevent the scream that I perceive. I wouldn't even be preventing it, though. I would just be straining and then not screaming.
Yes.
Okay, so the third option, though, is don't do anything. And this is what you said, when you don't do anything. So I want to, we can get clear on, are you actually doing nothing, or are you doing something? Because if you're not doing anything, then to not do anything requires that you're very present. You have to actually be consciously aware of what you're doing to know that you're not doing anything.
Okay.
If you, if you say, it feels like repression, then what you're actually saying is that you think it is repression, but you're not actually observing clearly to find out for sure. Because if you observe clearly, you will know. And the reason you'll know is because you will be consciously present to your experience, and you'll see in your direct experience whether you're doing something or not. So to not do is a I haven't come up with the right word for this, but we'll just say it's we'll call it an active process. Because you have to, in order to not do, you have to, in order to, and to have clarity around that, you have to be very, very present and sensitive to whether you're doing. You can know if you're doing or not doing, but you have to actually be, you have to be attentive to that rather than to the thought about doing or not doing. Because you could have a thought, I'm doing, or you could have a thought, I'm not doing, and those thoughts don't mean anything. You don't know that those thoughts are true. So the thoughts aren't going to help you. What will help you is just to actually be present to your experience and just observe if you're doing or not doing. So the way that I would recommend, I mean, in general, as a general recommendation to get clear on doing versus non-doing is see if I can give a clear description. This is a bit it's a good question, and so I don't want to oversimplify it, and maybe that's a mistake I've made in the past. I mean, it is very simple, but then I guess what I mean is it often takes a lot of persistent looking to really get clear on this. So I don't want to suggest that there's going to be one thing that you're going to do and you're going to see it and then that's going to be all light and roses and unicorns. There is, but in general, a general direction for the inquiry is I would suggest just observing any and all discomfort. And discomfort is a story, but you can just observe what the discomfort is, what the story of discomfort is actually pointing to in your direct experience. Okay. And you can assume, because it will prove useful to you, you can assume that discomfort is always actually strain. It's actually effort that you're making. So it's something you're already doing. And so I would just observe that closely to discover how you do it. So for example, so many years ago, I noticed, and I've shared this, I think, with some of you. I noticed that I had a lot of digestive problems, and I noticed that my abdomen was chronically tight. And one day it occurred to me, possibly my digestive problems are somehow connected to this chronic abdominal tension. So I became really curious about that. And the more curious I became about it, the more I became aware of it, and then the more I was aware of the discomfort. So there was a transitional phase where it seemed worse. And then I became aware that, sure enough, this tension was actually something that I was doing. Every time I was stressed, I noticed that the tension increased. And I started to observe how I was doing that tension. And I started to be curious to see if it was possible not to do that tension. And for a long time, that was, I had to be very persistent in that. Eventually, I started to become clear on some of the ways that I did the tension. And so then I started to explore the possibility of not doing that. And this is why I often make the distinction between the softening or an inhibition of a chronic doing versus a restraint or a resistance to the chronic doing. And that's the difference between so normally we're either doing or we're restraining the doing or trying to control the doing. So that's like either we're indulging or we're repressing. But this third option is through awareness, through perception, to simply see what it is that we're doing, to see that it is not what we think it is. It's not. So I thought I had digestive problems. Turns out that was incorrect. I had a habit of tensing my abdomen. That's actually what was happening. So, and this is an important distinction, because if I say I have digestive problems, I can try and solve digestive problems and I would be totally down the wrong path. So I had to start really just looking, just being observant. And the because of the habit, this is another important point. Because of the habit, when we first begin not to indulge the habit, it will seem, because our nervous system has an inversion in place. So it will seem as though we're having to do something. It will seem as though we're having to make some effort. It will seem as though, maybe it might even seem as though we're repressing something. So in this is, I think, essential. We have to have an attitude of curiosity, and we have to be like adventurers, because we're taking some risks, and we have to be willing to take those risks and to go in places and in directions that most people wouldn't, because most people just maintain the status quo their whole lives, and we're going somewhere where most people won't go. So we have to be willing to say, well, all I know is that the well-trodden path is not satisfying. So I have to be willing to do something different. And then just try it out, and be as honest and sincere as possible in that, so that we're obviously not attempting to delude ourselves further. But we move in a direction, or we explore in a direction, and then we have to be willing, because what will happen is the nervous system will respond, and it will say, this isn't working, this is wrong. Just go back and do a reset to what you normally do. But you don't want that. So because you don't want that, then just don't do that. And instead, and I know you've heard me talk about this, the benefit of what I call integration. The integration is, we have to be willing, the nervous system will say anything that's not the status quo is bad. We have to be willing to allow, and this is where humility is really helpful, and courage. I'd say humility and courage come together in this, because we have to be willing to admit, my way hasn't worked. So that's the humility. And the courage is, even though I'm uncertain and slightly afraid and uncomfortable with this new territory, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to just gently, very gently, but courageously, with eyes open, remain here until I become familiar with it, and then I can know. Because when I become familiar with it, then I'm in a better position to be able to judge whether this is good, bad, or indifferent. Before I'm familiar with it, the nervous system is just going to say this is bad. Sometimes it will say, it'll be a little blip of good, and then it says, whoa, hold on a second. I'm not sure. I thought it was good. I thought it was bliss. I thought it was wonderful, but actually, no, I'm not so sure. This is terrible. Let's just stop this. So we have to allow for that integration, which is, as I've described at other times, I've talked about that as a secondary shift. So the first shift is a shift into new territory. So we open, and then the secondary shift is the integration, in which we allow for that acclimation. We allow for ourselves to become familiar with what had been unfamiliar, so that we're not just reacting. Because the knee-jerk reaction is always going to be coming from our conditioning. Always. It's just always going to do that. And it's always going to be working to maintain the status quo. It just wants to get back to what is already known, which is why people see it. You see it in yourself, and you see it surely in other people. Keep doing the same things that aren't working. You see somebody that, I've said this plenty of times, you see somebody, they're on their third spouse, and they've remarried their mother or father the third time. Why is that? It's because everybody works hard to maintain the status quo. And so when we see that, we're wise just to recognize that and just to assume that's what's always going on. That's what's always going on. So anytime the nervous system is throwing a fit and saying, this is the end of the world, this is terrible, my recommendation is just pause and tune into this pure perception, and just notice, does this pure perception have a problem? is there actually something? Because I'm never going to, never, I don't think I would suggest to anybody that they do something that's likely to be harmful. It's not really my style. I wouldn't recommend that to people. But we can notice that oftentimes, what have we done? We have done almost nothing, very, very little change, but we're having thoughts that say, this is the end of the world. This is terrible. It's urgent. You must do something now. You must fix this now. We can't stand this for even one more second. And if we really look, we'll see what is it that's actually happening. Just some sensation. And the story that says, this is urgent, this is terrible, this is horrible, we've got to do something now, we've got to fix it, we've got to change it, we've got to get back to normal. So this secondary shift, this integration, is just to pause. When the nervous system is freaking out because change is occurring, then I say just pause and just look and see, is there anything really actually urgent? Because sometimes there is. 1 in a million times there's really honestly something urgent, and in which case we're wise to address that. But this is hardly ever the case that it's actually urgent. So if we react the way that we always have, then all we're doing, we just bounce back and forth. Indulgence, repression, indulgence, repression, indulgence, repression. Just spend a whole lifetime doing that. It's nauseating. So we can just pause. And the nervous system is like, wait, I'm uncomfortable. We've got to do something. But we can just see what's actually happening. And this is what I was trying to get at from the beginning, is we just see what's happening. There's big feelings. There's all this conditioned reactivity that works to maintain the status quo. I know that that's what it's doing. It's not my enemy. It's great if the status quo is good. It's just that in this case, the status quo is not good. So I see that it's doing its thing. It's like, oh, you got to fix it. Okay, thank you. But I'm going to just pause and I'm going to notice what it is that I'm conditioned to overlook, which is what I'm calling pure perception. Just to notice what's actually here, just now, just to see what's actually happening. Have I been shot? Have I been stabbed? Am I starving? So we can, and these are all useful things because the reactions are usually, they would be appropriate if we'd been shot or stabbed or starving. Those would maybe be appropriate, get help, run. But almost always that's not the case. So we want to just see that, because if we can see that, then we're seeing clearly. We're just seeing what's really happening. Okay, big feelings, thoughts, stories. And then it offers us this new possibility, which is, what if I just don't do anything just for this moment until there's clarity? If I know that I'm not actually being harmed right now, if I'm not being shot or stabbed, then what harm is actually going to come to me if I don't do anything? And clearly no harm is going to come to me. So, but what harm will come? What harm is likely to come if I react? Well, I can just look at my history and I can see what's likely to result from that, which will be maintaining the status quo, more misery, more suffering, more strain, more pain. So it's like we know what that is. Let's not indulge that anymore. Let's not give that anymore. Let's not overextend ourselves. Let's just rest here for a moment. That's allowed. It's an important thing. That's, you know, when my kids are, and there's a lot of big feelings, and my kids are acting out a lot of big feelings, there can seem to be this urgency. I've got to do something now. I've got to fix this now. I've got to take action now. And I just sometimes, like, I don't know what to do. So my mind can yell at me, scream at me, do something now. Okay, you can scream at me all you want. It doesn't help me to have clarity about what would actually be helpful. But what I can do is I can pause and I can look to see what's actually happening. And I can see all of the conditioning presents itself, and it's one unhelpful thing after another. It's like, wait, no, I tried that a million times and that never works. Tried that one doesn't work. I've tried that one too, and that one doesn't work. I've also tried that one and that one doesn't work. It's just like a long line of failed strategies. Because like I said, this is what we're looking at is the conditioning that goes back, it must go back millions, billions of years. This is every failed strategy that every living creature on this planet has ever had, we've inherited. And so when there is a stressor, which we often have, then all of those strategies come out. And the urgency usually up to now has caused us just to react. We just pick up whichever first strategy, if not the first strategy, the second strategy, if not the second strategy, the third strategy. You know, most of us, actually, we're pretty good at suppressing a few of them, right? You know, it's like first strategy is kill somebody. Most of us are pretty good at, okay, don't do that. Thankfully, you know, good. We've evolved a little bit as a species. Great. We don't have to murder one another just because, you know, that person got the last hot dog and you know, you don't have to murder them over that. It's okay. But all the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth strategies are also all failures. And we're not going to find a new successful strategy in that place where we keep looking, because it's just a repository of all the failed strategies. And I do appreciate the comment somebody made earlier that it's not just the failures, it's the successes too. And it's really ultimately the same thing. The failed strategies and the successful strategies are the same. Because either way, when we believe that that's the truth, then we are bound. We are binding ourselves to that truth, which is dead. It's not alive. It's just it's like we're not going to be satisfied. Papa G used to say, if you're going to the restaurant and you're eating the menu like this, you're not going to be satisfied doing that. You got to stop. And that's the thing. Whether you think the strategy is successful or not, it's irrelevant, because it's still dead. It's not the real thing. It's like trying to eat the menu. And what will satisfy us is to be fully present. And to be fully present means we don't know. We don't, all of the knowing is happening in the stories. Only the stories could claim that they know. Perception doesn't know. Perception is not ever going to say that it knows, because perception has no, knowing is not a function of perception. Knowing is just knowing is a function of the story, which is, oh, I've seen that before, I know what that is. Perception has no such delusion. Perception is clear. It's like, okay, this, don't know what it is, never seen this before, never experienced this before, because that's true. So perception is open. Now, at some point, and this is an important, I think this is another important, I say this a lot, I think a lot of my points are important, sorry about that. But I'll say also, I think this is an important point, which is that at some point, we're not likely to just remain in that, just as that open perception consciously. At some point, we're likely to, that's likely to collapse into action. So you could say, you know, that there's just pure potential until there's an action taken, and there seems to be action taken. So at some point, that pure potential will collapse into an action. But here's the thing, is that action can be new. That action can actually come from, it comes out of this openness of pure perception, and it infiltrates the level of the story. But it's actually new. It comes from, but it has to come from the perception into the story. We have to, and that's the integration. The integration is allowing that newness to infiltrate the level of the story. So we just have to be receptive to that. Now, like I said, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. It's okay. This isn't about trying to be perfect. You know, there are definitely, that life seems to, if we're open to it, life will teach us everything, and life will continually humble us. So the second I think I know something, life is very happy to set me straight on that. But to me, the beauty of this approach is that I don't actually have to know anything. If I have to know something, then I honestly, I think I'm in trouble. Then, you know, I'm just in a purely just functional argument, is that if something happens that affects me neurologically, and I'm no longer able to know things, and that's all that I've relied upon for my okayness, I'm in trouble. But when I recognize that knowing is not primary, knowing is a secondary occurrence, and that is, it trickles down from allowing pure perception to infiltrate the level of the story so that newness can enter the level of the story, then I'm much better, because I'm always going to be able to not know. If I recognize truly that real wisdom comes from not knowing, and just from openness and pure perception, which is effortless, and that I can observe is always the case whether I think I'm knowing or not, I'm in a much better position, because then I don't have to be so concerned. It doesn't matter if I know or don't know. I don't have to defend my knowing or not knowing. I don't have to be concerned about something happening in the future that might render me incapable of knowing, because my okayness doesn't depend upon knowing. And what this really, I use the word humility, but to me, this is the most valuable and yet maybe the most challenging component of it, is the humility, which comes from this recognition that I don't know. I really recognize that I am pure perception and I don't know. I don't even have the capacity to know. Then I'm left with, I don't even have anything to defend. But my conditioning still asserts itself that I have something to defend. So then it's just, where's my loyalty? I've seen that my loyalty has been with the conditioning, with the story, and I've seen what that has been. I've seen what that result has been, which has been totally dissatisfying. So instead, I'm taking a gamble. It is a bit of a gamble because I don't know. But I'm taking a gamble. I'm taking a gamble with what is. And it is, to me, it's just about being honest. Because again, if I'm on the shore and the tsunami is there, and it's 2 seconds away from striking, what am I going to do? And that's the reality that I'm meeting every moment. That is, and I say all of us, that's the actual reality that we're meeting every moment. This moment always is that meeting. And we find ourselves in this meeting now. The immensity of it is such that it leaves no room for me. And this is at the same time, it's the most wonderful and the most horrible thing, because it's the most horrible thing because because everything in my conditioning, everything screams no. Because everything in my conditioning wants to continue. It wants to project what it believes was in the past into the future. And so when it's faced with this present reality, which shows how absolutely insane that is, because it demonstrates that in reality, what is observable here now is that I don't know, and this is all that is. And yes, it feels like I imagine like dying would be. So when I see that, then the game is up. There's nothing, it's just obvious. There's nothing I'm going to do to win. There's no possibility of that. And my whole life has been only about winning. So everything that I've identified as, my whole identity, is revealed in this moment to be a complete fraud. And all I'm left with is I don't know. That is ultimately liberating and ultimately terrifying. But it's it's humbling. And that humility to me is because I see in my conditioning, you know, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of a good example, which is not a testament to how smooth and wonderful my home life is. It's more just a testament to my poor memory, I guess. But I can't think of a good example. They happen all the time, where one of my kids will say or do something. Oh, it's the most infuriating for me is when I'm like, I'm hungry, or I've got something else that I'm wanting to do, and they're doing something dangerous and refusing to listen to me. To me, that's the like, and and there I am. That to me is the perfect moment. It's the absolute perfect moment because it shows my complete impotence. To achieve what I think must be achieved in order to be okay. And so then what it reveals to me is this humility that's possible. The humility of it, because it's this, again, it's this intersection in which there is a clarity that's not in thought, but it's a clarity of intention, of desire. I desire for my children to be safe. And I realize in that moment that I don't have that power. But I also realize that I will be moved to do what I can. So there is no room for me in that, because all that I identify as is all of that. The only thing that has to contribute is just, but it's not fair, or I don't like this, or I'll show them, or how dare they, or poor me. That's all that my identity can contribute to this. But miraculously, in the moment, something else shows up. Because if it was just my identity, this would be far worse than it is. What shows up is, we call it grace. I don't care what we call it. It's just, or humility. It's just, or just, it's an infusion. Okay, here's what it is. It's the infusion of newness into the story, because I'm witness to something new happening that truly surprises me. I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that was possible through me, because my identity that I've believed about myself was just something different, where the only possibility was either I'm going to scream and run after them and how dare you disobey me, or I'm going to just say, oh, I can't do anything, I give up, and I'll just ignore it. But miraculously, something new shows up, and it definitely doesn't show up because I'm thinking hard about it and I'm strategizing. It shows up because I just stop and I observe all of the habits of grasping at something to do and a way to solve the problem and how to figure it out and how to win, how to save face, how to be, it's so fascinating to watch in myself all of these ideas that build up about what I think I know and how advanced I think I am, and then to have that completely undone by a 4-year-old. It's very, very humbling, and that's just it. But it's so revealing. It's so powerful. It's so wonderful, and I, as much as I think I would like it to be different, the reality is that I'm eternally grateful for it the way that it is. And I really believe that that's true of all of us. I really believe that all of us believe that we want it to be some other way, but really, we're very grateful for the way it is. Which doesn't mean that we want the the pain, or just say pain. I think pain is a good catch-all for all of the various phenomena that we could put under that umbrella. I'm not proposing that we need that. That's still within the story. That can change. That can change through the infusion of what comes through the newness of now. But it's my experience over and over and over that I think that I don't want humility. I think that I want pride. I think that I want to be a big winner. And yet, however it arrives, usually with me kicking and screaming, I'm just grateful for that humility, because it infuses that newness into my life. And that's something that we can choose. And we can choose that just by being aware of this possibility and choosing it by not feeding the loop of the status quo. All we have to do is just pause and then just look honestly at what's really happening, and we'll see it. We'll see the way in which we continue to we indulge these habits of just perpetuating it. We think more about it even when it's not happening, and we're just rehearsing what we think happened, and we're rehearsing how that shouldn't be, and how that's unfair. It's the same stuff over and over. It's unfair, it's not right, it's not good, how dare they, blah blah blah. And when we just see it, and we just see, oh, that's awfully familiar, that's the same thing that's been going on for as long as I can remember, and I've been doing the same things for as long as I can remember, and I've been getting the same results for as long as I can remember, and I haven't been shot, and I haven't been stabbed. My life, my blood is not leaving my body in a disturbing rate at the moment. So maybe it's okay for me just to pause and not know, just to not know, and to stop straining and making the effort to try it and figure it out. It's like that one thing. If we could just do that, just pause throughout the day a few times, just a few times, it will become so that you'll want to do it all the time, because you'll start to realize how wonderful it is just to pause and just observe how much misery you're creating for yourself. Just to see all of the focus on the repetitive thoughts and the strain to try to hold it together and figure it out and be righteous and correct, and to be approved, and get others love. Just to see the amount of effort and strain that goes into that, and to see how completely dissatisfying that is. You'd think that would be depressing, maybe, but it's not depressing. It's liberating, because in the seeing of that, you can realize that's totally optional. Who cares? Who cares what they think? Really, who cares? I mean, it really struck me when I realized that I was at a point in my life when I was seriously considering suicide, and I hadn't actually lived. I was going to kill myself, but I hadn't even lived. And when I saw how bad of an idea that was, I mean, really, think about that. I mean, maybe life is not a good gift. Maybe it's a terrible thing, but do we know? Do we actually know? No, we don't know, because very few of us have actually lived. And when I saw that, I realized, wait a second, I don't know what life is, but I'm actually considering throwing it away without actually having experienced it. That's a bad idea. That's a really bad idea. You know, I saw that. I just, wow, that's a terrible idea. I said, so what is actually happening? I'm all upset and I feel like I'm stuck, and I'm so upset about what? If I do something differently, if I don't indulge the same habits over and over, then what? People might not approve of me. I might go hungry. Somebody might spit on me. I mean, what is it? What is it that I'm so terrified of that I won't live, but I'll kill myself? So to me, that is it was a very useful thing to see, because then I realized, well, gosh, I, I could do anything. And I don't mean like I could become president of the United States. I just mean there's so many possibilities, so many that I've never even remotely actually considered, much less tried. So many things that I could do. You know, I could become a Catholic. Never tried that. I never tried. You know, I mean, it's just like one of a million things. I never tried being a Buddhist. I never tried being a Hindu. I never tried being a Jain. I never tried dressing as a woman. I never tried anything. You know, I didn't try these things. But I'm willing to actually entertain ending my life without having lived with that, because so what was the real problem? The real problem was just that I had boxed myself in, and I had believed that I'm this thing that I need to work really, really hard to maintain that. So of course that's depressing. That's horrible. But to see it is liberating, to see that there is nobody binding me. It's totally, it's just a thing that I'm doing. I'm choosing that moment to moment. And I pin it on this so-called past. I say, well, it's always been that way, and look at everybody and this, that, and the other. And that's just, well, wait a second. Says who? You know, this is back to, what do I actually know? Because that's just the story. The story is all of this is what I know, and this is how it is, and this is how life works, and this is who I am, and this is what's possible, and this is what's not possible. And that's why my life is hell, and it will always be hell, and I should just kill myself. And to wake up from that is to see, I don't know anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know that the past that I think happened ever happened. I don't know that. I really don't know that. I actually don't know what anybody else thinks. I don't know what anybody else feels. I don't know what anybody else believes. I don't know anything. Nothing. I don't know anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I came from. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what any of this is. I don't know anything. Well, hallelujah. Isn't that an amazing thing? To go from complete bondage to complete liberation in the blink of an eye. And it's available to anybody. It's just a question of, then will you really honor that? Will you really live the truth of that? Will you really remember that moment to moment when you find yourself clinging to the identity? Will you remember that insight in that moment of seeing that if you can see it, that you can see that you're maybe willing to kill yourself without having really lived? Then that insight, are you willing to really live that? And that's, to me, that's always the invitation. That's the edge. It's not something that I've earned. It's not something I've acquired. It's not something I've accomplished. It's not something I've arrived at. It's a lived edge. It's a lived falling. It's a lived surrender. It's moment to moment. It's a choice, moment to moment. And it's a choice that arises out of the clear seeing. It's not a choice that arises out of will. That doesn't work. I'm sure we've all tried that. I tried that. I had read some half-baked thing about Ramana Maharshi, and I thought, oh, I'll just ask over and over, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I'm going to get more intense about it. And no, that's not it. It's not about knowing the answer to who am I. It's about actually knowing how to look. It's about actually knowing how to be honest. It's about knowing how to be vulnerable. It's about how to not know. And that's not something we can cling to. That's something that that's a moment to moment surrender. It's a surrender, because even as the newness is infused into the level of the story, that has to keep happening. It's not like, okay, now newness is infused into the story, and now it'll just be my way, and it's going to be heavenly from now on. It's no, now and now and now and now and now. Now, I mean, my kids aren't even teenagers yet. So from what I've been told, I've got a great deal to look forward to. And thinking about what a jackass I was as a teenager. So, but my children are delightful in every way, so I'm sure that they will be just the world's most wonderful people as teenagers, and it will be fluffy and soft and no conflict. Anyway, was that in any way useful?
Yes, Joey, and I really love what you said about the story about at the beginning about the man in the flood.
Yeah,
and that really we're always being shown the way if we can see.
That's right. It's like,
because I never thought that story. I mean, I heard that story before, but I didn't think it applied to me because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
But I can see a little bit differently now.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's honest. Yeah, because I never thought it applied to me either. I was like, I would just get on the boat. That's I'm not stupid. I'd get on the boat.
Yeah.
And, well, who cares if you get on the boat or not? That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is to really see that it's always here now, always here now, always being offered now, and only the only conflict is in the story, in the conditioned mind, which is, it says this isn't right, but it's, of course this isn't right, because its idea of what's right is what it thinks it already knows, and this is unknown. So no matter what happens, we're never going to arrive at a place in which we always feel that this is right, because that's not at the level of the conditioned mind. At the level of the conditioned mind, the story, this will always be wrong.
Yeah.
Because this is not what is known. It's that simple. So it's really about, where is our loyalty? Where is our allegiance? Is it to that which is just constantly, it's a malcontent, it's just always saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, it should be this other way.
Yeah.
And it's not bad, it's not its fault, it's not something wrong with it. That's how it is. But we can recognize that, and when we recognize that, then like, okay, that's just what it does. I don't need to care. That was it. It took me a long time in life to learn that when somebody tells me something, they're not asking me to solve a problem. This is, I think, something that a lot of men maybe don't learn for a long time in their lives. And so every time somebody would tell me something, I would think, oh, well, it's a problem here. Here's how you should solve that. And then people don't usually respond very well to that. They say, well, I just didn't want you to say that. I just wanted you to hear me. I'm like, well, what's wrong with you? Why did you tell me? Why are you taking up my time? I'm giving you good advice. Okay. It took a long time to figure out when people tell me something, they're not asking me to solve a problem. And it's the same here, is that just because the conditioned mind is doing its thing doesn't mean that actually that what we need to do is try to solve a problem. We could just say, oh, thank you. And it could be that simple. It's just like, I acknowledge you, thank you, and then be done with it. Because it's just doing its job. It's just like, I don't know, that's what it does. It just outputs. It just feeds back. It's like, hey, this might be helpful. Is it like this? It's constantly wanting to know, is it like this? Is it like that? Maybe like this. And that's all we have to do is just, okay, great. I don't need to do anything with that. I don't need to solve anything. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to yell at it. I don't need to tell it to shut up. I don't need to try to change it. I don't need to do anything with it. It's, okay, great. Still there, still doing your thing. Excellent. Meanwhile, here's the tsunami. It's like, here is the divine tsunami. And I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it because I'm puzzling over, is it like this other thing? Is it like that? Should it be this other way? I want to just be here just to really experience it, and not know. And not because, and this is the thing, is not because I have a belief that the tsunami is better. I don't actually have that belief. My conditioning is, I hate tsunamis. I want to be, I want only to be on calm beaches. I only want to be in the Caribbean where there's no tsunamis and no hurricanes.
And me too.
And, what's that? You too?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but then I find myself in the midst of a tsunami over and over and over and over. And so then it's just, okay. So what I think I want is irrelevant, because it's like the grass is always greener. I wake up, and if my kids are having conflict, I'm probably going to have the thought, I wish this wasn't happening. But so what? Who cares? Who cares if I wish this wasn't happening? I wish this wasn't happening. It is not, it's like, okay, that's true, maybe, but who cares? This is what's here. This is what's being offered. This is, because I don't know. Now, I would say a much more enlightened person could just stay with, I don't know. I'm not that enlightened, so I do one little unnecessary step. I say, I don't know. And since I don't know, I'll just assume this is best. Totally unnecessary. Nobody needs to do that. I do that just because I'm not that enlightened. But it's like a little helpful thing. Just, I don't know. I assume it's best. If and a really enlightened person wouldn't need to refer to God, I'm sure, but I'm not that enlightened, so I get to do that. I say, I don't know. I think I don't like this, but I don't know, so I'll just assume that this is best. And that this is God's will. Just say that. And like I said, that's an unnecessary step for those of us who are not that enlightened. If you're really enlightened, you just stay with the, all you have to do is just know that there is no person, I guess. But for those of us who are a little less enlightened, we can just have our little crutches. And I find that to be a useful one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And oh goodness, I should go. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye for now.